playfulness and curiosity.
This new superpower called persuasion.
They're the rules of the world, and then here's the rules for us.
What does rich mean?
Stories and wisdom.
Welcome back to the Stories and Wisdom podcast. Today we are joined by somebody whose entire career has revolved around helping people and companies tell sharper, smarter, and more human stories within their roles. So Shoop is the founder for Pursue.ai, a platform where you conquer your career goals with insights and confidence powered by AI. Did I get that right, Shoop?
You certainly did.
So before we get into our stories, how do you describe the work you do and how did you get there?
So I spent nearly 20 years at Microsoft, and that's where we know each other from. We've worked on projects together, and the last big thing I did there was to build a career exploration tool, which we deployed to 60,000 internal employees. And I recently moved on from Microsoft thinking that there's such an opportunity now with AI and the ability to have impact at a much larger scale and bring some tools to market and capabilities to market that it was the right time for me to move into this new world of AI-based development and solutions.
Nice. Let's jump into our first segment. So this is a segment called Memoir Moments. And in Memoir Moments, we help you revisit an early experience, maybe something that shaped the way you lead, think, build. And it need not be what you're currently working on. It's so many other things that you've done. So you can take it as a origin story path or an inflection point story. So looking back, is there any earlier moment, it could be before Microsoft, where the paths to what you're doing now was laid or how you're thinking now was laid?
So one of the experiences that really shaped my current trajectory and the way I think about things was at a conference where we were presenting. We were having an interactive session with people, and we had this game that we played, and it unlocked conversations that had people really lean in. It was one of the few times that I was at a conference where I saw nobody on their cell phone. People were completely engaged, communicating with each other. There was that eye contact. And I was thinking to myself, you know what? There's something here. There's something magical going on here. And it really was, once digging into it, it really was the connection between the people and how they were presenting their stories and their experiences. It wasn't the mechanics of the game at all. It was the interaction between the people, and seeing them light up and engage in this way was something that really stuck with me. And I'm like, this is something that needs to be applied in many other areas. And that's where I'm using that now to be able to connect with people, understand what are their true motivations, their true needs, and bring that to a solution that really resonates with them and they can achieve the goals and the outcomes that they're looking for.
You're talking about the ones that we did together.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So let's take it even further back from there because you went where you went. So what Shoop's talking about is the precursor for Stories and Wisdom was some work that we did, and not because somebody told us to do it. We just said we're going to take this space to do this work. But the reason I think I was connected with you was your manager at that point, who I knew from before. She felt that your background in games and being just a hobby game enthusiast, specialist maybe even, but let's say enthusiast. And this was a conversation she had with me. She said that the current role that she gives you doesn't actually flex all your creative potential. And she's like, I think you should take him in your project if it makes sense for you, and then see where you guys go. And then we got into that. So what I'm trying to actually do here is to actually pull you into your background in gaming and then the game structures that you saw, because that interaction is anyway deeper. But being able to translate that in a daily job role and then say something from a different world can apply here for a business outcome. We just never connected those dots. Is that the crossover or cross to modalities for something aligned.
Yeah, absolutely. We all have kind of diverse backgrounds and diverse interests that we have outside of work, right? And there's so many times where those can be applied within a work context. And, this example, I'm a huge tabletop board gamer. And the concepts of problem solving and mechanics and interacting with people could absolutely be brought into a environment that is not just about having fun, but it's actually about having communications and potentially solving problems or understanding your partners better, right? And to me, when we started creating those cards on Post-it notes and just doing some early prototyping, to see some of that magic happen, right? When you see people trying it out and seeing, oh, this could actually work. That is the spark that really makes you love your job, right? Where you're bringing something from a different part of your life, some knowledge, some experience, some perspectives, and applying them in a completely different dimension. That's really firing the neurons in your brain, right? All of those happy hormones, they're all triggering. That ideation sessions, that's what you really want to come to work for.
So how are you taking that memoir into your crossover now with, I guess, your no superpower with AI in your current venture?
Yeah. So you can imagine gamification, the neuroscience, right? So the idea behind Pursue is not only to understand what type of careers you would be good for in kind of doing those traditional assessments of your MBTI personality type, but the real challenge is getting you to action on those recommendations. We can present a whole bunch of recommendations on what could be good roles for you or your next career step. But there's often emotional blockers that people have associated with these, right? So being able to use gamification and behavior science to help people overcome some of those friction points and those barriers is, again, kind of that magic moment that we were experiencing when we were, playing around with Post-it notes and coming up with the game. It's the exact same type of solutioning that I get to do with technologies like AI and methodologies like gamification or behavior science, neuroscience, career frameworks, pulling all of these different elements together to create a very innovative solution that hasn't really been seen before. That's the excitement that gets me up every day.
Let's move on to our next segment. So our next segment is called Decision Do-Over. This is when you can look at a moment from the past that with hindsight, you get to say is like, I would like a do-over on that. Are there any that come to mind that you want to share in the Decision Do-Over segment?
So I think as I look back on my career, especially at Microsoft, I spent 20 years there, most of it in the kind of the role definition space, role ownership space, career development space. And I got to a point where I was leading the definition and the leadership and the strategy for multiple roles in our professional services organization and doing traveling. It was a dream job. But I got to the point where I got comfortable. And while I was, mentoring other people and working on cool projects, delivering impact, working with incredible people, I found that I personally wasn't growing. I was leveraging all the experiences and skills that I had built, but I had gotten to the point where I myself wasn't really growing. But because of all those other elements, the travel, the status, or the level that I was at, it was very comfortable, right? And to leave that in order to grow, it was a bit scary, right? But now that I have moved on, I'm realizing, what? I was in that comfortable place too long. I should have realized that I wasn't fulfilled. I was content, but I wasn't fulfilled. And it was at that point where I realized that there was something more needed. That's when I made my move. But that comfortable place, I would say I was in that for a little too long.
So I have several questions following up from that. But let's go to the job that you were actually doing, because it is not something that is common in most companies. It's a big company privilege to have a role like that, where your job is to define the job description or role against which And that role will exist as a blueprint in the countries around the world within which this company operates in. And the people who come into that role get to do that job with these outcomes and get to grow in that space. Did I miss anything? That's my understanding of what you were doing, like as a role.
Yeah, no, that's exactly it. It's creating the role definitions, the functions that they're going to be performing, all aligned to the business strategy, and then landing that with the thousands of people that are potentially in that role around the world. Hence, kind of the travel and being able to connect with people in person. Yeah, that was the role. So you're dealing with people that are performing this role in the field around the world, as well as kind of strategic leaders that are setting, multi-year strategy, and you're trying to create a workforce that has the skills and capabilities that can execute on that strategy.
So you're not just trying to get the alignment of the strategy and operationalize globally, because that is one part, like the effectiveness in a very efficient manner that can be scaled globally is one, I would say, massive part of what you did. But the other part is also the people angle, where that individual in that role doesn't feel like they are one among thousands in their role, even though they are. Like it's consistent, but still unique enough where they feel like they have the ability to grow within that role. They have a scope to run year by year, that they feel fulfilled. Is that also within your scope?
Exactly. So it's not only the definition of those roles, but making sure that that audience, that population of people, that they have career paths, that there is options for them, that they are thriving in their roles, to understand what are the challenges, and then work with process teams or tools teams to make their lives easier. So there were many different dimensions to this role, and it was a fantastic role. But I'd gotten to that place where I was proficient at it, but I also stopped getting challenged.
So here's the question, and there's a long setup to get to this one, which is you've taken care of the future and growth for so many people, yet you are blindsided by your own growth within your own role, because your job was to define growth prospects for others.
Yep.
But when you brought yourself on for a decision doer and said like, yeah, I could have that's where I lacked. I stayed too much in that. Whereas part of your role was to make sure that others don't feel the same thing that you felt. So the real question is, for people who are in that, like they might be anywhere in the career, they could be early, mid, late. Now that the person who's the architect of roles was blindsided for that person's own role growth as you defined it and we've clarified, how does one not be in that spot from your perspective? Now that you've gone through all of that, and with hindsight, you're going back, like what would you give as guidance for others? How often should they look back in, reflect, be honest, and then do that? Like, how do they do this?
Yeah, I think the advice that I can give is to really start taking charge of your career. Don't necessarily wait for your career to just happen or for roles to be offered or to be presented to you. Take the time to review your career. Maybe it's once a year. Maybe it's a couple times a year. It really depends on, where you are and how are you feeling about your career. But if you are feeling some of these nagging feelings like I'm successful, but I'm not happy, right? Those are the types of things that should trigger you to, okay, there's something I need to unpack here. And to do, there's plenty of exercises or techniques that you can use to get clarity in what it is that you're lacking or you need or what will make you thrive. But the advice would be, don't let your career pass you by. Take some active control of what is going to make you happy and successful, aligned to your own values.
Let's go a bit deeper on this, because I was there when you were there as well. Like you did do that. Mid-year career discussions, you'd have to write them down, get some reflection point, have a discussion. And in your case, I was envious of your management structure was very sane, very caring, and supportive. Like those are all true statements, at least in your aspect. So there was all that mechanism. And yet if you're feeling like this, others might be also not having, like, it's very easy to say, look up, but that doesn't mean you did not. You did too. And you had a supporting structure who cared and supported, who would have supported you on anything you wanted to do through the best of their ability. Yet, if you're making this case, there's something else beyond the advice that I think we have to capture here for us to be aware of. Like, what is that?
And you know what? That desire, that need for change can easily be veiled. And it was in my case, when I was having my performance or my career development discussions with my managers, I was happy in my career. I was thrilled doing what I was traveling. I was being paid well. Had influence, like all those things that you want. I had all of those, right? So, what more do you want out of your career? I really couldn't articulate it because I had all those check boxes were checked. And it actually was only when I started working on a project specifically focused on career exploration, that AI career exploration tool that we built, it was only then that I got deeper into the techniques and the tools of exploring yourself as well as options, that I really started applying that internally to myself and doing those internal reflections. It's like, oh, even though I have all of these things, there's something that's important to me that is missing. Right. And it was during that experience and that project where I kind of had that realization.
And I feel like we had to go a bit deeper there because it's not that easy, as you said. Like there had to be somewhere where you're doing it, and then you have this moment. It's not just I'll think in a corner and then write it through, because you didn't have that language or even instrumentation to know what you might be missing, because you were not. And to force that was not a venture to get on. However, when you were given a new opportunity, then you realize like, oh, I could do that. And this is a gap and I do want to excite and then move forward.
Absolutely. It's one of those situations where you kind of need to come to that point, and then the path is available, or it's visible.
Okay, let's go on to our next segment. And so this segment, I know you're going to have a lot of fun with. It's called Vision Venture. So in Vision Venture, it's about what's ahead, the frontier you're stepping into now. And I know your frontier is filled with AI in this space. So what is this frontier for Vision that you're actually creating, or you're hoping that there's going to be a thriving new transformation that you're leading? Like, what's your frontier that you're defining, designing, what you're looking forward to?
In my role at Microsoft, while I wasn't a deep technical person, I did have a technical background from previous. So I am somewhat comfortable with technology and applying it, and seeing the wave of AI just rising and the capabilities increasing at an incredible rate. It seems like every week almost there's updates to the capabilities and the accuracy of AI. So that was a huge thing that I saw that I wanted to be part of. And then in my role at Microsoft, I was also exposed to behavior therapy, cognitive frameworks, neuroscience, and really understanding the way our brains are wired. They're a little more predictable than we may think. We have a lot of choice, but we tend to react based on the patterns that have been imprinted on us, right? That is incredibly powerful to help people move beyond certain barriers or friction points. So I knew that I wanted to have something involved with that. And being able to bring AI and kind of the neuroscience and just the experience I had with helping people with their careers, it's such a big part of us, our careers. It defines maybe too much, right? Because we tend to ask, oh, what do you do, as one of the first questions, right? But whether we like it or not, our career has a huge impact on us. We spend how many hours of our waking day in it. So helping somebody identify what it is that is going to make them happy, make them thrive, that aligns with their values, and then get them there through these behavioral techniques and neuroscience that can present them with these micro actions or these opportunities to move past some of these friction points that they've had in a way that just naturally works for them, right? I saw that as a gap, right? There's plenty of tools out there that can help you find a job, or it can tell you what your personality type is, or it can give you a report. But to take those next steps and those actions to get that first interview, to build those skills, to reach out to somebody even, to learn about what does that role look like in real life, that's scary, right? That's outside of most people's comfort zones. So I see there's a huge opportunity in using AI conversations with neuroscience in the career space to help people achieve those actions and get them to a career that they're going to be thriving in.
And what are some things that you think we should be watching out for as you're building this frontier?
So I think the impact of AI on careers itself is, we're starting to see it already. I've been working on developing the solution, And it's so important to just keep validating it and researching to make sure that you are on target. Because what I did 6 months ago is not exactly where I'm going to be going from the research that I just did, last week. It's very much identified, you know what? AI is going to have a much bigger impact on people's careers than we thought 6 months ago. And what does that mean? Well, there's going to be a whole bunch of anxiety associated with the threat to people's roles. So building into the app, a new kind of core capability is anxiety-aware experiences, right? So the conversations or even the UI that's presented to you will react to your current state of calmness or anxiety or whatever state you're in.
All right, let's move on to our next segment, and I want to explore what you just braced up. So our next segment is called Puzzle Points. So puzzle points is where we explore the edges. So you're working on questions, but then that puzzle has multiple dimensions to it. We talked about a few. So even with the context of what you were bringing in, like you're bringing in neuroscience, but also the current state of an individual engaging with a technology, and the technology, at least as I understood how you described it, was it morphs to not match what the person is doing, but then morph to a part where it actually helps the person who's engaging. How are you thinking that through? And what are the ways to think that through? Because you're kind of approximating what that person is feeling, then you have to confirm it. And then you have to make sure that the solution lines up, or solutions line up, or how you're giving the choice. And you can't ask, but you still have to lead. There are so many questions there. And it feels like a big enough puzzle for us to ponder. How are you thinking that through?
Yeah. So you mentioned it's a big puzzle, and indeed it is. And, one of the tensions that I have right now is understanding the user as deeply as possible so that we can have those interactions, whether it's in the chat or in the UX, that meets them where they are. The challenge with that is you can't overwhelm people with questions. Like an onboarding cannot be 40 minutes of questions. Otherwise, you're going to lose people after 10, 15 minutes. So, one of the challenges or puzzles that I'm trying to unlock right now is how do we very quickly get the information that we need about the user right now so that we can start providing them value very quickly and then continue on that learning journey with them, right? So we're learning about them, they're learning about them as well, but it can't be a long journey before you start providing value to the customer. You need to bring them along and start interacting with them and showing them that there is something special about this experience very quickly early on.
And another part that I want to deal with what you're saying is like you're leaning in heavily on technology and AI, but at the same time, you're leaning in heavily on humanity as well, like leaning on technology to help somebody feel less anxious while learning together. Whereas a lot of the debates, I'll give air quotes at this point, is almost like technology versus human. Where are you leading this side? If you pick this one, is that going to be the cost of that? Whereas it's interesting to me that you're actually saying, I'm going to lean heavily on technology, but I'm going to lean heavily on the humanness as well for the individual who's trying to do that. I'm not sure if you see the same thing, but as you're doing that, again, there is that tension, which you're leaning in both sides to create the tension. Where's the resolution as you're defining it? And I don't know, and you might not even have the answer, but talk us through this, because it's very clear to me that you're leaning both sides. So how are you thinking about this?
So the way I think about it is, AI is an incredibly powerful tool, from analysis to generation to all of the different capabilities, vision capabilities. Like all of these are incredible capabilities. And they're being used in industry, they're being used in all these different places. But, going back to my experiences at Microsoft, where I was very much focused on the humans in roles and what their lives were like, and hearing those stories of when they moved on to another role, whether it was progressing up into the more senior position or transitioning into something adjacent, those human stories were super impactful on me. And being able to see how my work has positively impacted people, I wanted to continue that beyond Microsoft. And this is where my love of technology and my desire to have positive human impact on people in something that's really important in their lives, like their career, was really kind of those two pieces coming together. Now my job is to figure out, well, how do I use all of these different capabilities of the technology and consider all of the different human elements and how people think and the uniqueness of each individual, and how do I bring these two pieces together in order to create an experience that people really haven't seen before, or was unavailable because it required a $300 an hour coach and you needed them for 10 hours a week to get you through some of these challenges. Well, now it can be available at a much more affordable cost to a much broader audience.
Brilliant. Looking forward to seeing that, Shoop. Our last section is really game break. This or that. So we'll actually give you 2 words and you choose this or that. And this will be a customized version for you, Shoop. So precision or play?
Ooh, play.
Industry lens or human lens?
I would go human lens at this point.
Startup chaos or enterprise structure?
Now that I'm in the startup chaos, not that I'm having second thoughts, it's a lot. There's a lot to deal with in the startup world because as a founder, especially when it's a small company, you're wearing many hats, if not all the hats. So there is some value in the enterprise, but I would say as far as making progress and seeing results, you can't beat the startup world.
I can see you're missing the weekly updates, the monthly kickoffs.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. The reports, the meetings to discuss the meetings that are coming. Those hours you'll never get back. There's a lot of overhead. And Pursue, I'm designing it to be as few, if not zero, real employees apart from myself. I believe that AI agents are going to be able to take on the various functions that the business has, including customer support, all the different elements. So it's exciting times. The tech's not there quite yet, but it's right on the verge. So we'll see how it goes.
Okay, Shoop, this was incredible. So thank you for bringing in clarity and also your passion for roles, people, and AI. So for listeners who are learning and want to know more about Pursue, where can they pursue their interest in following you?
Yeah, you can jump onto our website. It's pursue.ai, PURSU, and you can find me there or LinkedIn.
Thanks for your time once again. We worked together for so long through multiple projects, and it's very fascinating to actually see you take all of that passion and then come out and do something that I do believe is going to add tremendous value to people and also businesses. So thank you for giving us a glimpse into what you are building and your passion on the podcast.
It's been great chatting. Thanks so much. And we'll chat again, Pradeep.
And to everyone listening, we'll be back soon with more stories, questions, and wisdom.
Playfulness and curiosity.
This new superpower called persuasion.
They're the rules of the world, and then here's the rules for us.
Real deep pain.
That was a very different level of inequity.
What does rich mean?
Stories and wisdom, we